Well, today is not your typical Tuesday wrestling episode. Reason behind that is because the NWA did not have any power episode. As you know, we're still coming out of the Crockett Cup, so it would make sense that they probably would put in a clip from the pre-show. I had no tendency to do that, so I decided, you know what? Let's do something different. I am going to do NXT in case anybody asks, but I decided to review the latest two shows by GCW. We're talking about Tournament of Survival and, of course, Cage of Survival 2. So that's going to be our main focus, the two GCW shows and NXT, and we have a minimal of two updates for our news updates to tell about. So, let's get ready for another episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Hey everybody, welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone. All things that is pro wrestling with AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance, various promotions, wrestlers, matches, and championships. I am your host, J Rod here. So, as I said before, this is not your typical Tuesday wrestling, so we're just going to be doing something different. So, let's start with GCW Tournament of Survival. Now, those who are not GCW fans or never heard of what the hell of what is a tournament of survival, well, this is an annual tournament where everybody gets involved in death matches. Now, we have first round matches, quarterfinal matches, semifinals, and what so on. So this is a very interesting development with this type of thing. There's 12 participants. However, what I did like about this one, instead of having like one on one, they decided to that the first round be all three ways. That way they can minimizing the time and everything else, which I pretty think is a pretty smart one because, like I said, 12 wrestlers participate. So it's like one set of three, one set of three, one set of three. So we'll see how that goes. Let's get started on that. Now, as I said before, this is our first round matches. We have Ciclopse versus Green Phantom versus Miedo Extremo. Now, you know they're all going to be a lot of toys being used. We're talking about light bulbs, doors, possibly some things that will cut you like barbed wire, thumbtacks, all the enchilada on whatever you can get on this one. However, it was, of course, Ciclopse with the frog splash onto Green Phantom to give him the win. So he advances into the, I believe, the semifinals. Next match, we have a pair of Japanese wrestlers. We have Tomoya Hirata versus Toru Sugiura versus Joey Janela. Now, I know some of you guys think in the back of your eyes, since you know who Joey Janela is, you're probably thinking Joey Janela has it in his back. It's going to be great. He's going to win this match. I mean, normally that's what a typical normal fan, a regular fan would say. But in reality, you got to look at it this way. You got wrestlers from Japan who are also into the deathmatch scene, and these guys are well known into that scene as well. And I've seen mostly Togi Sugiura. Was it Toto Sugiura? Mostly, he's like one of the top guys. But however, Irada, he's in fact the top champion of the Freedoms promotion. But well, both of these guys are from that. That kind of plays out. But however, in this match, it was of course Hirata with an hammerlock takedown onto Sugiura. No, Sugiura did a hammerlock takedown onto Hirata in order to pick up the win. So Joey Janela did not get pinned or submitted in this type of match. Now, our next match, we have a very interesting one. We have El Desperado versus the Duke, John Wayne Murdoch, versus the Bull, Matt Tremont. Now, I know some of you New Japan fans are probably asking yourselves, what the hell is Desperado doing in death matches? I don't know. Kevin Kelly talked about this a couple of times, thinking that he had no business being involved because he put himself in the situation with Moxley. I mean, but he learned to respect it because his one natural enemy he faced on countless times is Jun Kasai. So he respects it very much. He never did consider himself as one of them, but he respects their ways, how they bring out the energy and all this other stuff. And I say I give props to Desperado. Like, he may not be like part of that whole scene, but he respects it a whole lot and he participates in it. Shows that if you guys can do it, so can I. But however, that wasn't the case because I know some of you would think that Desperado would win. No. I don't think he has that much of experience, but he enjoys it. But in this case, it was, of course, John Wayne Murdoch with the destroy through a glass onto Despy that allowed him to advance into the semifinals. Now, our last match of the first round, we have a pair of ladies taking place. We have, of course, Casey Kurt versus Sawyer Wreck versus Rina Yamashita. Now, normally in these type of matches, everyone for themselves, but who's a much bigger threat in this particular match? Well, the bigger threat is Sawyer Wreck because she's more bigger than everyone else. So if you're going to try to win this, take down the big person in the match. However, it was, of course, Rina Yamashita with the Splash Mountain that picked up the win, and it was over right from there. So she won with it onto, excuse me, onto Casey Kirk. Now, our next match is a non-tournament match because they're taking breaks between that. We have a very interesting match. We have Alec Price versus Gringo Loco versus Jack Cartwheel versus Blake Christian. The one person that no one can stand is in this match. Now, you probably can guess possibly that all Price, Gringo, and Cartwheel will try to, how do I say, try to push him out to the side, knowing that he's a problem. Well, we have seen countless times when it comes to Blake Christian, he always takes advantage. Now, let's say, for example, that Alec Price pulled off a move and Christian takes advantage of it. And that's exactly what he did. Price applied a little kick move onto onto Cartwheel, and apparently Blake Christian stomped Price and picked up the win, so he stole it. Just like that. And of course, he doesn't care what they think. Now, our next match, we have the semifinals of the Tournament of Survival 8. Let's go with our first one. We have Ciclope versus John Wayne Murdoch. This was a very interesting match and also difficult for me to predict because these two men are fantastic. I've seen Ciclope from the very beginning when he was starting out, but John Wayne Murdoch, you all know he's one of those old school deathmatch wrestlers that you get to enjoy. But it was in fact the Duke with a submission move that forced Ciclope to tap out. Now, our next match, we have a pair of Japanese wrestlers. On this one, we have Toru Sugiura versus Rina Yamashita. This was going to be a little difficult and close one. But, however, it was Rina Yamashita that walked out on this one with the Splash Mountain, and she advances into the finals, facing the Duke. Now, they took 15 minutes to clean up the ring due to the fact they have to clean it up and set up more toys and all this other stuff. So we have the Duke with John Wayne Murdoch versus Rina Yamashita. You know this is going to be brutality when it comes to these two people. I mean, they're crazy as hell. So basically, how is this going to be? Now, the one thing I was a bit more curious, how is Rina Yamashita going to apply the Splash Mountain since the Duke is a bit more bigger? Well, she tried an avalanche type Splash Mountain to pick up the win. So as soon as she won the match, Sugiura and Irada attacked her because, they questioned her loyalty over her involvement with GCW and Freedoms. But however, luckily for her, she had the guys from Freedoms that wants to show up. I think this whole thing this attack was just setting up because a while back I did mention that GCW will be heading back to Japan. So that most likely fit into the storyline. So we're going to see what happens then. So I think we'll end it right here, right now, and move on to the next GCW show. And I believe that one is, Cage of Survival. Okay, GCW Cage of Survival. Now, just to clarify, there is no cage throughout the entire event. That's only for the main event because we have Rina Yamashita versus Masha Slamovich for the GCW World Title. Now, we'll get to that in a bit. Now, our opening match features Janai Kai versus Maki Ito. You probably can guess that this one finished with Maki applying her infamous DDT from the top corner buckle, and boom, just like that. But as soon as the match was over, apparently here comes the so-called Deathmatch King, and he declares Steph DeLanders as the queen, the Deathmatch Queen. And of course, the first ever internet, people were like telling them to shut the F up, that sort of thing. But he thought that they're about to hurt Maki Ito because Nick Gage wasn't there. But luckily, their opponents were. The real people who are in fact involved in Deathmatch. We're talking about the Kirks. Now, once again, Cardona does not want to face them in Deathmatch rules, so they wanted to do it in sports entertainment rules, and they all know that's a whole load of horse crap in every way aspect. But of course, Steph DeLanda declares herself as the Deathmatch Queen, but fans could disagree because we all know what happened the day before. She was in the tournament of survival. That makes her qualify, not her. So basically, there's that. But of course, later we saw that they're trying to bring out the tools when they switched back to death matches, thinking it would fall in their favor, but it did not. Apparently, things were not looking well for Cardona and the Landers. But because of it, apparently the Landers didn't use the belt onto Casey Kirk. She got busted open. It did allow for them to win the match. But however, because of that, it became a 2-on-1 scenario. But luckily for them, Nick Gage showed up. Basically, Cardona did not expect him to be there anyway. But luckily, they took out Matt Cardona. You see, they had a couple light tubes. And then when that happened, Nick Gage gave the opportunity to whack Cardona while Brandon Kirk hold him, and boom, he started bleeding out, crying like a little bitch, and all this other stuff. So he told him to never come back. So I think many fans were saying never come back. But of course, during Twitter, I remember Cardona was pitching about it and saying this, and Maki Ito was saying, "Suck my dick." Oh man, I love Maki. She doesn't give a damn what Cardona thinks. But yeah. So anyway, we move on. Our next match, I have to say, this is one of those matches you definitely want to watch. We have Ninja Mac versus Hijo del Vikingo. I have to say, there's going to be a lot of high flying spots between these two guys. Those two guys are the most craziest high flyers we ever seen. That's always been the case for that. But in the end, the real high flyer here is none other than Hijo del Vikingo when he applied the 630. Next match, we have a trios match. Team number 1, we have Jack Cartwheel, Alec Price, and Jimmy Lloyd. They take on the GCW Tag Team Champions, the East and West Express, Jordan Oliver and Nick Wayne, and they pair up with Mike Bailey. I thought this match was pretty good. I loved it. It was pretty amazing. The whole cohesiveness from both sides, spectacular. But in the end, it was, of course, we have everybody applied their moves. I mean, there was a double cloud cutters. We saw the flamingo driver. 1, 2, 3, it was done. However, the East and West Express saying they're looking for good competition to challenge them for the GCW tag team titles. And all of a sudden, we saw Ultraviolet from House of Glory, along with the Bookers. We're talking about Amazing Red and Brian XL. So they were issuing the challenge, but of course, as always, they allowed Ultraviolet to low blow these men, and they took the belts, claiming they are the brand new tag team champions. No. We'll see what happens until then. But I'm sure many of the GCW rosters are not going to let these guys get away with it. Now, our next match is a death match tag team match. We have the guys from Freedoms. We're talking about Tomoya Irada and Toru Sugiura taking on Los Macizos. Now, there's going to be a lot of brutality and blood and all this other stuff. So that's how it rolls out. But in this case, it was in fact it was Cyclopse with a pinfall onto Sugiura to pick up the win. But however, Rina Yamashita hasn't forgotten what happened the day before. So basically, she went out to get some payback, but she wasn't the only one. So did the Duke. So I'm going to presume that this is leading up to the GCW going to Japan storyline. So we will be waiting for that until that happens. Now our next death match. This one I have to say was great. We have Desperado versus Joey Janela. I have to say it was pretty great. Now we know Joey Janela can deliver. I mean, he can put over certain wrestlers that he like. I mean, he did put over Kota Ibushi when he came back, and I think that's almost the same thing. But what I did like is everything that happened. But it only took two Pinchy Locos to put away Joey Janela. The first time was on the light tubes, and the second one when nothing was there, boom, just like that. And of course, Joey Janela gave him the respect. But Desperado made a very interesting promo. He called out Jon Moxley once again. If you guys remember, he did have like a similar type of match like this with Jon Moxley. But I don't know what. It's kind of interesting that now he wants to face Jon Moxley again. So we'll see what that leads out. Now, our main event is the GCW World Title match. And like I said before, this one has a cage. So it was between Rina Yamashita versus Masha Slamovich. Now, this was a total brutal match you couldn't possibly imagine. Now, you probably thought Masha was going to retain the title. Now, however, that wasn't the case. Apparently, we forgot about one particular person, and that is Blake Christian, who won some sort of opportunity to cash in for the world title, and he did. He stomped Masha and became the GCW world title. This is something that many fans did not like, and that's the reason it happened. So he finally get what he wanted, feeling that this is his time now, because he felt that he was being left out. So we'll see what happens then. So I think that's pretty much it with GCW. Let's move on with NXT. Okay, NXT. It opened up with the sudden arrival of Baron Corbin. Now, if you guys remember last week, after Carmelo Hayes successfully defended the NXT title against Noam Dar, Baron Corbin attacked. Now, what was the motives behind that? Well, it looks like the Baron Corbin is sick and tired of this nonsense coming from the NXT brand about certain wrestlers that were not being called off and all that. So he feels that, he needs to teach them a lesson. Like he thinks he's doing good work. But however, he in fact has to deal, he was confronted by Ilya Dragunov. So basically, Ilya Dragunov wanted to show him, that everything that he says is a bunch of crap. But of course, as soon as that happened, Williams showed up for payback for what Baron Corbin did to Mello. So that's one of the things I did notice about him. Now, apparently we were supposed to have Ilya Dragunov versus Baron Corbin, but Braun Breaker attacked Ilya Dragunov. That match was changed into Trick Williams. Now, we do see a moment in earlier in the week where we see Dehale was training with Charlie Dempsey and Drew Gulak. Duke was a little bit concerned, but it seems like Dehale has confidence because she's going to be in a battle royale to determine the number one contender for Tiffany Stratton's NXT Women's title. Now, she did state, Tiffany Stratton did mention in an interview that, that she does have this distinct feeling that Lyra Valkyria was going to win this, but it's going to be the same result where she retains her title. Now, our first match, we have the Schism, consistent of Ava Reigns and the Dyad taking on Diamond Mine, Ivy Nile, and the Creed brothers. However, much of this match, Ava Reigns was trying to avoid, of course, Ivy Niles, because definitely she would definitely want to get her hands on her in every aspect. But apparently, when things were getting chaotic, apparently Ava Reigns used the mask onto Ivy Niles to pick up the win. Now, for a fact this is not over between Ivy Niles and Ava Reigns by a long shot. Now, Stacks went to visit D'Angelo. Now, it's still unclear who is really the person who ratted out Tony D'Angelo. It's still unclear for that. So Stacks is trying to work up, but the real thing is he does believe that the Gallows brothers really was behind it. But D'Angelo's trying to tell him he has to learn to do things on his own. Basically, even though he's the underboss, he has to do this. So the obvious question is, how will Stacks try to prove that D'Angelo was innocent? Well, we'll just wait and see what happens. Now, our next match, we have Danny Palmer versus Blair Davenport. Now, if you guys remember, Davenport was behind the recent attacks on Sol Ruka, Nikita Lyons, who else? Wendy Chu, and many. So Danny Palmer tried everything in her power to try to get her hands on her, but Blair threw a lot of viciousness onto Palmer until she applied the Falcon Arrow to put her away. So she could be one of the potentials that could challenge for the NXT title, the NXT Women's title, my bad. But yeah, that's what we can see. Now, Baron Corbin against Trick Williams. You probably thought this match was going to be a little a little interesting, because it kind of did. Now, Baron Corbin, who was trying to teach the NXT talent a lesson because of their complainants and all this other stuff. So basically, Trick Williams, he did a phenomenal job, but apparently he ended up with the end of days by Baron Corbin. So Baron Corbin's appearance in NXT is not going to be done by a long shot. Now, another little interesting segment by, of course, Nathan Frazier talks about what happened at Battleground. But one of my favorite moments is when he called out Dragon Lee and tells him, what does he think about Noam Dar's friends? He calls them, the lost legend, like named every person. I think the best one was called Noam Dar's Rent-A friend. So basically, he's trying to say that, that he cannot win without them, that sort of thing. Of course, and, I thought it was just too funny. I don't know, but he did state it, Nathan Frazier, that he will challenge Noam Dar for the NXT Heritage Cup. Now, our next match we have is Mustafa Ali versus Joe Gacy. Now, Gacy has been trying to prove that this friendship between Bate, Lee, and Ali is a buttload of crap. That kind of sets it in, but, Mustafa Ali, he is determined to try to work his way up to the top to challenge for any belt that he wants. However, he did apply to 450 onto Joe Gacy, but once the match was over, the Dyad shows up, and then, of course, Lee and Bates shows up. But Gacy is not happy because he feels that everything he tried to do to prove point that this little friendship is a false pretense. But apparently he's frustrated. But the Dyad did remind him that they and Ava Reigns did won their match. I mean, that is a good positive message, but it doesn't seem for Joe Gacy like enough, knowing that he did not try to prove his point. Now, if you guys remember clearly, I talked about this whole thing with the partners if they know each other. Now, Fallon Briggs and Jensen were having a little discussion until Blade and No Fish showed up. Try to test them to see how much they know each other, how much those two know each other. Apparently, it kind of did. And then, of course, Walker and Ledger show up, having a little time of their lives, and they're saying, "Let's go get some drinks," So they party. However, Gallows Boys show up and all this and other stuff, try to get under the skin of Malik Blade and Enofa Dre's. But they're like saying, "Do we really need to do this?" Yes, we do. So that kind of went in. Now, our next match, we have Eddie Thorpe versus Damon Kemp. Now, Damon Kemp has been trying to been threatened by the arrival of Eddie Thorpe to NXT for quite some time. Now, he feels that the last time these two met, they cheated their way through. Well, apparently this time it was a little bit interesting. Eddie Thorpe pinned Damon kept at the corner, but his foot was on the rope. Ref didn't see it and declared the winner. So basically, that kind of sets it all. So the obvious thing is this is not going to end well right that. Now, our next match, we had Dabba-Kato versus Scripps. And of course, Axiom shows up, try to get under the skin of Dabba-Kato. But Scripps was able to pick up the win when he rolled up Dabba-Kato and pin him. But however, Dabba-Kato applied his own brand of destruction, wasted both Scripps and Axiom. So this is going to be interesting how they're going to go. Now, our women's title match, women's title battle royal match for the number one contender. We had like tons of girls. We had Lyra Valkyria, Cora Jade. Of course, I forgot to mention Dana Brooks shows up. Plenty others were there. But the one person we did not expect that was going to win this was Thea Hale. Somehow she was missed. And when that happened, she took out Brooks and Jade, becoming the number one contender. And of course, everybody from Chase U showed up to celebrate the celebration. I think this is a pretty good ending, but I highly doubt that she's going to win the title because it's just too early right now. However, at the end, Braun Breaker, as you know, he called out Seth Rollins, and he wanted him to put the WWE World Heavyweight title on the line on NXT. So we'll see what the architect has to say. So that's going to be fun. I can't wait to see what it's going to be, due to the fact that, if you guys remember, Seth Rollins was the first ever NXT champion. We'll just wait and see what happens then. I think that's pretty much it right now with NXT. I believe it's time to move on to our final thing, news updates. Okay, so here's our news updates for today. We only have two. As you may or may not remember, a while back, I did mention that Wrestling Revolver will be making their debut next month in Texas. I think in the Arlington, Fort Worth area. I'm not 100% sure if I can remember. This was actually orchestrated by Matthew Palmer and his wife Athena. If you guys remember, these two are in fact natives of Texas. So that kind of fits in. However, they did announce for the upcoming event, they're calling this Texas Toasted or something like that, I believe. Alex Shelley will be there, and the Remix title will be defended. I believe there will be more announcements along the way. I will be doing those so. And finally, a very interesting thing comes out for monthly Peruso. Mina Shirakawa is trying to see if she can convince Trinity Fatu to come to Stardom. I know many fans have talked about this before, like they would like to see her join the Club Venus. Now, there was discussions recently, not too long ago, that Pure Russo and Bushiroad and Stardom seem like they are interested in her, but they cannot afford her. They understand the value, but the problem is they're not sure if they can afford to pay her to be there. That's the thing. Now, I know many fans would like to see Trinity join Club Venus because it fits her there. I mean, we don't know for sure exactly. Now, we know Mina could fit in perfectly with her because, Mina has served as someone who speaks English and all that to help out the foreign girls and all that. But we don't know just yet how if it's gonna happen. So we just gotta wait and see what happens down the road. So I think that's pretty much it. So let's just call it a day. Well, I hope everybody enjoys this episode. Uh, Coming up, I believe we have AEW Dynamite, and of course, we got the latest Gleech show. Since I already catch up with Stardom and the GCW stuff, there's still some one particular wrestling shows I haven't catched up yet, and that is Gambari Pro. I just missed out 4 shows, 3 of them from the same day, and one just recently. I'll do those possibly next. Also, stay tuned for my upcoming podcast, DWZ Podcast with J Rod. We're gonna have some interesting topics in that particular as well. So I'll see you guys in the next DWZ time. Same DWZ channel. I must bid all of you adieu. So, goodbye. And have a nice day.